This is the College Football Connection Podcast with Alvin Reed, Bradford Bruns, and Marty Jenkins on 101 ESPN.
Into the Plains we go for round number 3 of our College Football Connection season previews for the 2025 campaign ahead. How's it going, everyone? Bradford Bruns back with you on this occasion once again from our studio in Creve Coeur. It is the 101 ESPN YouTube channel plus 101ESPN.com. And guys, let me tell you out there, Major League Baseball may indeed be ready for a break, for a respite, but we are only ramping up our college pigskin coverage here. Can't wait to dive into team number 3. Speaking of War Eagle, and it has been an arduous time of late for Hugh Freeze's program. When you're talking about the Auburn Tigers, yes, the same team that on one hand, it's quite the juxtaposition here when you're talking about the Auburn Tigers, because over the last 15 years, only 6 programs nationally have both won a college football title and played for another set of hardware. Auburn actually falls into that distinction, but on the other hand, also over the last few years, 4 straight losing seasons, only 2 bowl victories all told since 2011, and back-to-back disappointing campaigns at that for Hugh Freeze ever since he came over after that ill-fated conclusion, we should note, in Oxford, Mississippi. So what does 2025 in particular hold for Auburn and its considerable faithful? You know, the environment is always there waiting and just anticipating a renewal of sorts, a rebirth, one that was supposed to come with the arrival of Freeze a couple of years ago. But in fairness, he did state from the very beginning of his tenure it would take, in his estimation, 3 full recruiting classes to get Auburn back up to snuff. Well, this is year number 3 of the cycle, and if we are to really take into consideration and take inventory of what was obtained, not only from the recruiting class, but specifically from a transfer portal perspective, Auburn ranking in the top 10 in that department nationwide, and a lot of that has to do with a new man at the controls of the offense. Jackson Arnold, just a couple of years ago, guys, he was considered the number 3 overall prospect in the entire nation. We understand that it wasn't exactly a great set of circumstances at Oklahoma. His previous stop, the offensive line, different coordinators, all of those things really did conspire against the dual threat quarterback to the point where he was transferring following the season. And it's going to be very fascinating to monitor how quickly this newfangled Auburn attack is able to get up to speed entering, yes, the SEC opener. It's against Oklahoma. And oh yeah, mind you, it's in Norman on September the 20th. But before we put that cart before the horse, let's take stock of exactly what and who Arnold has at his disposal, too. We know that Freeze is basically going to be regaining, in a sense, a lot of control of the offense. He is resuming the bulk of those play-calling duties. And given what we saw, given the relationships that he developed with his respective quarterbacks back at Ole Miss roughly a decade or so ago, that would seem to be a good sign moving forward for this team. We shall see. Also good for Arnold, not the fact that he's going to have to lean on a bevy of replacement backs in the backfield. Hunter is gone. He's now with the Los Angeles Rams, so it's going to be a rotation among backfield members, but you have to be incredibly optimistic about what you have on the outside and then in the slot for that matter too. Cam Coleman, last year, he came onto campus. He was a 5-star recruit. He dealt with a shoulder impingement for the bulk of the season, especially in the first half. But down the stretch, post that Mizzou game in particular, how about in his final 3 tilts, 6 receiving touchdowns, 8 TDs in all during his initial campaign, and he's going to be joined by quite a thread coming from the transfer portal to boot. Eric Singleton Jr., very well, Arnold, for that matter, could have one of the best receiving tandems in the entire country, and also you expect this offense to be bolstered further by a very, very experienced offensive line. Auburn is going to be returning all 3 guys along the interior, and then if you're talking about out wide, left and right tackle respectively, They went the route of the transfer portal therein. So it is expected to be, very well could be, a top 10 offensive line in the entire country. But at the end of the day, it's going to come down to being able to finish drives, something that Auburn could not accomplish with any degree of regularity or consistency a season ago. It wasn't really a problem as far as matriculating the ball down the field, but getting it in the end zone, or rather just having success when situated within the red zone. That is really where the Tigers had their primary difficulties, because it wasn't confined to just the work of the quarterback, the previous signal caller in Peyton Thorne. He was fine. He wasn't great, but if you're averaging basically 250 yards through the air per game without a bevy of weapons, or at least a lot of green guys in that regard last season, right? Instead, this offense stalled, and when you were forced to go into the year for the better part of the year without the services of your esteemed place kicker, Alex McPherson, he was down for the better part of the season. Auburn was 8 of 17, guys, in terms of field goal accuracy, dead last in the SEC. And when you couple that with the propensity for committing so many penalties and also the turnover margin, well, it's no wonder that Auburn finished 5-7 and once again missed out on bowl festivities. You wonder about the other side of the football, too, because I do think that this offense has the potential to really be one of the high-powered variety. I have qualms about the defensive side of the football. And when you're recruiting at Auburn, when you're playing there, and you are still considered one of the top-tier outfits in the SEC, you're going to attract talent regardless. And talking about talent on the defensive line coming from the edge, Keldrick Falk is already considered a surefire first-round NFL draft selection come 2026. Now, I do think he has some areas, some different strengths on which to improve when you're talking about being a team-leading sack sort of guy. 7 is not going to cut the mustard. That number is inevitably going to go up. But how much support is he going to be able to have, especially in the interior? I'm a little unsure about that. I'm also unsure about the fact that this particular linebacking group lost all of its leading tacklers. The secondary, yes, you're returning a lot of skill, athleticism, physicality. You're largely healthy at this point in the summer. When you go to the 2 deep and 3 deep sets, though, when really examining this roster overall, I don't know if these Tigers are as equipped to deal with some of the rigors of the SEC schedule down the stretch as maybe some of the other counterparts elsewhere in the league. But speaking about that schedule, whereas last week we focused on South Carolina here on the College Football Connection on the 101 ESPN YouTube channel plus 101ESPN.com, and we talked about how the Gamecocks, when November rolls around, that's when Lenora Sellers and company need to be playing their best brand of football. It's almost the reversal in the case of Auburn, because I'm looking beyond that tough, admittedly difficult season opener, in my opinion, versus Baylor. You have to go to Waco, and against the Bears, August 29th, that first Friday night lights to begin week number 1. That's not going to be any picnic, guys, whatsoever. Beyond that, when you get beyond the Ball States of the world, we already mentioned the aforementioned contest versus Oklahoma. That gets everything started on the SEC side of things on September the 20th. So you travel there, and the very following week, it doesn't get any easier. No, rather, it arguably ratchets up as far as intensity is concerned, because regardless of last season's result against Texas A&M, this time around, you're going to Kyle Field. Yes, you get a bye week thereafter, but then you're back at home, and you're hosting Georgia. You're then hosting Missouri on October the 18th. Good luck getting through that gauntlet before you arrive at November, when it does become much more manageable. It's much more palatable when you're talking about the likes of Vanderbilt, Kentucky, Mercer, some of those teams you're hosting as well. And then you basically conclude the regular season with, Alabama, which very well could be in desperation mode, in a manner of speaking, relatively at that point. So I look at this over-under figure, what is projected. I look at the 7.5, and I say, okay, that's difficult to be able to supersede that if I'm an Auburn, even a diehard Auburn enthusiast, because in looking for this breakthrough, getting back to a bowl game for a lot of fans, a lot of the hardcore zealots out there down south, that's not going to be good enough. But small, baby-ish steps have to be undertaken in year number 3 under Freeze. And when you're talking about just basically being able to reverse the fortunes, the offensive fortunes at that, it's going to start in a fairly grand manner, I anticipate, with Arnold. There will be some growing pains, but when you have those singularly talented receivers on whom to rely in Singleton Jr. and Cam Coleman, goodness gracious, it should be entertaining, if nothing else, back at Auburn. So I am going to settle for right now on the number of 7 with the potential for more, getting into a decent mid-range bowl game, if you will, but the future does appear to be exceedingly bright in Auburn. Hey, this time around, you'll have to make do with the 7-ish realm of possibilities, but who knows what 2026 could bring, because if not, let's just say that maybe there's a little more pressure. That seat gets more and more warm for one Hugh Freeze. Well, once again, we appreciate your joining us very much, St. Louis. Anybody else who is out there consuming our product as well, next week, we are very excited to be taking a deep dive into those Georgia Bulldogs. And hey, it won't be long before we turn the page. We get to Alabama. We get to some of the other heavyweights in the SEC. Next week, as a matter of fact, SEC Media Days unfolding in Atlanta, Georgia. The Big 12 holding its festivities, wrapping those up at present. So much to which to get as we roll along on the College Football Connection. As always, my name is Bradford Bruns. Thank you very much, guys. Enjoy the remainder of your weekend. And until next time, take care. We'll talk to you extremely soon.